Two people can eat the same calories, weigh the same on the scale, and even look similar in clothes. Yet one of them carries a much higher health risk. The reason often isn't the fat you can pinch, it's the fat you can't see. Most of us stand in front of a mirror and obsess over subcutaneous fat, the soft layer under the skin that covers our muscles. We treat it like a cosmetic flaw, something to tighten up before a vacation, a wedding, or beach season. But beneath that surface layer, packed deep inside your abdomen and wrapped around your liver, your pancreas, and your intestines, is a very different kind of fat, a far more serious player: visceral fat. And visceral fat is not passive. It doesn't simply sit there as extra storage. Visceral fat is biologically active, more like a gland than a pantry. It acts like an endocrine tissue, releasing inflammatory cytokines into your system, raising background inflammation, and interfering with cardiovascular function and hormonal and metabolic signaling, especially the pathways that regulate blood sugar and insulin. That's why visceral fat isn't just about how you look, it's about how your body functions. But the most alarming part isn't only that visceral fat exists, it's why your body tends to build it. Visceral fat often isn't there merely because you ate a little too much or skipped a few workouts. In many cases, it's there because your body has interpreted your environment as unsafe. It's a biological decision, your system choosing protection. To understand how to reduce this dangerous tissue, you have to understand the architect behind it, cortisol. And to understand cortisol, you have to look at the machinery your body uses for survival. In modern culture, cortisol gets labeled the stress hormone, a villain that must be eliminated. But from an evolutionary point of view, cortisol was a hero. For most of human history, it was one of the most important chemicals keeping our species alive. Picture our ancestors living on open plains. A predator appears, a rival group threatens them, food disappears without warning. In that moment, the brain triggers a survival circuit called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands working as a single alarm system. This circuit is an override switch. It tells the body, stop digesting, stop reproducing, stop investing energy in building muscle. Those are luxuries during a crisis. Instead, it floods the bloodstream with glucose to power a fight or flight response. Cortisol isn't designed to make you anxious. It's designed to make you fast, focused, and hard to kill. Now here's the fascinating part, because this is where your modern struggle begins. After danger passes, the body needs a rapid way to refuel. Evolution learned that storing energy in the arms or legs isn't ideal for emergency access, and it can be a disadvantage. If you're running from a lion, you don't want heavy legs. The liver, your body's chemical processing plant, needs fuel immediately available. So the body developed a specific distribution strategy. It placed a high density of glucocorticoid receptors, essentially cortisol docking sites, deep within the abdomen. When cortisol is high, these receptors behave like magnets. They pull fat from the bloodstream and lock it around the internal organs. For a hunter-gatherer, that was a brilliant adaptation, a survival backpack of energy stored exactly where vital organs could access fast. Visceral fat was insurance. It was protection against starvation and death. But here's the modern problem. Your biology hasn't updated its software in thousands of years, while your environment has changed completely. Today, there are no tigers. There are deadlines, traffic, constant notifications, blue light at night, financial pressure, social anxiety, and the quiet stress of always being on call. The threats have changed, but the body's response has not. And unlike ancient danger, which was intense but brief, modern stress is rarely acute. It's chronic. You're not sprinting from a predator for 10 minutes, you're simmering in low-grade anxiety for 16 hours a day. This creates what we can call the cortisol trap. Because stress never fully resolves, cortisol doesn't return to baseline. Your body stays in a perpetual state of emergency mode. It keeps signaling the liver to release glucose for a physical fight that never happens. And if you don't burn that glucose off through movement, the pancreas has to release insulin to clear sugar from the blood. This is where the loop becomes deadly. Insulin is a storage hormone. When cortisol is high and insulin is high, your body is pushed into a very specific outcome. Take the unused energy and store it preferentially back into visceral fat. You become trapped in a biological cycle where your system keeps preparing for famine and conflict that never arrive, while modern life keeps feeding the stress signal. Chronic stress also triggers a hormonal trade-off often described as pregnenolone steal. Cortisol is so vital for perceived survival that the body will prioritize making it over almost anything else. It uses a precursor hormone called pregnenolone to produce cortisol. But pregnenolone is also the raw material for your sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen. Under high stress, the body diverts that material towards cortisol and reproductive hormones can drop. This helps explain the skinny fat phenotype, skinny arms and legs, but a distended, firmer belly. High stress can be catabolic. It breaks down muscle tissue from the limbs, converts it into glucose, and then, through the insulin-cortisol loop, redeposits energy as fat around the organs. You're not just gaining weight, you're being structurally reshaped by a survival blueprint built for the Stone Age. Then there's appetite. Stress increases chemicals like neuropeptide Y, which strongly pushes you towards carbohydrate cravings. This isn't simply a willpower failure, it's a biological command. Energy demand is high, refill quickly. Neuropeptide Y tells the brain that the fastest way to replenish is through dense, easy-to-digest calories. In that moment, you're not fighting a preference, you're fighting a signal almost as powerful as the drive to breathe. So how do you break the system? How do you unlock those deep stores of visceral fat? The answer isn't starvation, it isn't punishing yourself with more stress. In fact, extreme dieting and excessive cardio can backfire because they can raise cortisol further. Even long, steady cardio for hours can mimic the stress of a prolonged hunt, pushing cortisol up and making the body hold on to fat more tightly. The real hack is counterintuitive: signal safety. You have to convince your autonomic nervous system that the war is over. Start by redefining exercise. High-intensity training has its place, but for a body already flooded with cortisol, it can be counterproductive. One of the most effective tools for lowering cortisol while still burning fat is low-intensity, steady-state movement, especially walking. Walking burns fuel without triggering fight or flight. It uncouples the stress response. And the simple act of moving through space, optic flow, the passing of scenery, can calm the amygdala, the brain's fear center. It sends a quiet message: I'm moving forward. I'm not trapped. I'm safe. But to strip visceral fat without sacrificing muscle, you also need an opposite signal, one that protects tissue and raises metabolism. That's where heavy resistance training comes in. Lifting heavy sends a powerful anabolic message that counters cortisol's muscle-wasting effects. It supports testosterone and growth hormone, both of which oppose visceral fat storage. And by building muscle, you improve insulin sensitivity, giving glucose a place to go instead of the abdomen. The next pillar is nutritional timing. It's not only what you eat, but when you eat. Cortisol follows a circadian rhythm. It should peak in the morning to help you wake up and drop in the evening to help you sleep. Modern habits often flip this. Late caffeine keeps cortisol elevated, and sugar at night spikes insulin. Aligning with biology can help. A high-protein breakfast supports stable energy and metabolic pace without a big insulin spike. And shifting complex carbohydrates to dinner can be strategic. Carbs can increase serotonin, which supports melatonin, helping blunt evening cortisol and shifting the body from defense mode into repair mode. Which brings us to the most ignored lever of all, sleep. One night of sleep deprivation can significantly reduce insulin sensitivity. If you sleep less than about 7 hours consistently, your body reads it as a major stressor and raises baseline cortisol the next day to keep you alert. That drives visceral fat storage and creates the tired but wired feeling, exhausted but unable to power down because stress hormones are stuck on. Sleep hygiene, cool room, darkness, consistent routine is not passive rest. It's an active metabolic strategy. We also have to consider micronutrients. Under chronic stress, the body burns through certain minerals quickly, especially magnesium, often called the relaxation mineral. Low magnesium makes the stress response more reactive, like a hair-trigger cortisol system. Some people use magnesium glycinate and adaptogens like ashwagandha or rhodiola as supportive tools, not magic pills, but ways to reduce biological noise so the body can respond to safety signals. You can also use hormetic stressors, short, controlled challenges that build resilience. Cold exposure, like cold showers, might spike cortisol briefly, but can train faster recovery over time, lowering baseline stress for some people. Cold exposure can also activate brown adipose tissue, which burns energy to generate heat and supports metabolic health.
Finally, address the psychological trigger. Visceral fat is physical, but its root is often perception. The brain doesn't neatly distinguish between a physical threat and a mental worry. If you experience life as a chain of emergencies, your chemistry will match that story. That's why deep, diaphragmatic breathing isn't just a wellness cliche, it's a physiological switch. It stimulates the vagus nerve and activates the parasympathetic rest and digest state. And that's the state in which the body feels safe enough to let go of emergency reserves. In the end, burning visceral fat isn't mainly a battle of willpower. It's a negotiation with your biology. You're up against millions of years of programming designed to keep you alive. Visceral fat once protected your ancestors from starvation, but to thrive in the modern world, you have to prove to your physiology that the famine isn't coming. You do that by optimizing sleep, prioritizing walking and heavy lifting, aligning nutrition with circadian rhythm, supporting mineral balance, and reducing chronic stress signals. You don't just lose weight, you reset the baseline. You turn off the alarm, and when the alarm goes quiet, the fortress of visceral fat finally begins to break down.
Your body only lets go of visceral fat when it feels safe. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you like this kind of simple, practical science, hit like and subscribe. I'll share more step-by-step videos you can actually apply.